Sorry, I was getting my notes together.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I had so many of these. So I'm like, wait a minute, where are my notes? Okay. So I'm gonna focus on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, because it's the Christmas show, right? So, alrighty, here we go. So, on Christmas Eve, 1945, the Cleveland Rams. That's right. That's who they used to be. I know it's crazy how these things happen. But so anyway, the reason I'm saying is that the Cleveland Rams won their first championship, beating the Washington team. I'm sorry, 15-14 at Cleveland Stadium in negative 8th-degree weather in what was the coldest game in NFL history at the time. That was the last game that the Rams played in Cleveland as they moved to Los Angeles in the offseason. So it wasn't 1945 Christmas Eve, but the reason I'm bringing up 1945 is because that is the last time the Cleveland Rams played in Cleveland and they left. And again, why is that important? Because now we move on to actual Christmas Eve 1950. So I was giving you some background because I don't think people realize that the Rams were actually a Cleveland team, because a lot of teams have kind of moved around, and I don't think people realized that before. So yeah, the Rams were a Cleveland team, and then they moved to Los Angeles in the off season. And so again, Christmas Eve 1950. Here we go. The Rams were back in Cleveland for the NFL championship. This time against the Cleveland Browns. So the former team came back and played against the new team, the Cleveland Browns. It would be the first of 3 championship battles between the Browns over the next 6 years, from 1950. The contest was evenly matched on slick turf of Cleveland Stadium. It all came down to Cleveland's final drive. There was 1.48 minutes left in regulation with LA up by a single point. And the game rested in the hands of veteran Browns signal caller Otto Graham. Using both his legs and short passing game, Graham engineered a drive down the field as the Rams defenders had to sit back due to slippery conditions. Remember, this is before domes. Christmas Eve 1950 in the Midwest, right? So cold, slick, everything slippery. And so they're playing in those elements. With 20 seconds remaining, Cleveland kicker Lou Groza nailed a 16-yard field goal to put the Browns up by 2. The Rams gave everyone a scare on a kickoff return when Jerry Williams caught Groza's kick and was going through traffic, racing, and slippery conditions, made it 35 yards before Groza himself tackled, that's right, the kicker, tackled this guy to the ground. And so Cleveland actually won the 1950 Christmas Eve national championship because there was no Super Bowl. Okay, Super Bowl is common era, right? So this was the NFL championship, and so they went on to defeat the LA Rams 38-28. And so again, that is the Christmas Eve championship game in 1950. Moving on to Christmas Eve 1961. Another championship game, because you have to remember the reason this happens because football was shorter, right? It wasn't like these long weeks; they were a lot shorter. So they're about like 14 weeks, and that's why a lot of championship games or a lot of the even division games, right, or division to move on to championships would happen around this time, around Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So, all right, so Christmas Eve, 1961, Balboa Stadium, San Diego. The AFL championship game took place, but there were 2 leagues also. Sorry for that. I think I've said that a few times during sharing history in the NFL. Took place as the San Diego Chargers, because that's who they were at the time, hosted the Houston Oilers. FYI, they are today's Tennessee Titans, because I don't know if you guys know, that was a big hoopla because Houston Oilers had a big, big history, and they left, they were moved to Tennessee, and they were actually Tennessee Oilers for a while too, before they became the Tennessee Titans. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know if you knew that. But at this time, Houston Oilers still existed. And so Houston's high-flying offense was subdued by the Chargers' defense. So the Chargers' defense has been known, I guess, it's kind of been off, right? The Chargers for a long time were known for being a defensive team, like even in the 60s, for most of the contest. But Houston defenders, they weren't quite either. They actually sacked the Chargers QB at the time, Jack Kemp, 6 times. He was sacked 6 times in this game. He was intercepted 4 times. And so it was a really rough game. 13 players between both teams were assisted off the field because, again, not a lot of safety measures, right? This is 1960s, so people were getting hurt left and right. But the Oilers' Billy Cannon scored the game's only touchdown on a 35-yard pass play from George Blanda as the Oilers actually beat the Chargers 10-3. Okay, we keep complaining about these low-scoring games today, right? We've been seeing a lot more of those, these 10-3, 10-7. This is an AFL championship game. And the final score was 10-3, and the Oilers won that one. So let's remind people that I guess we're headed back to, I guess both teams are becoming a lot better again, kind of even keel. So I guess seeing these 10-3, 10-6, 9-7, games that we've been seeing, we're seeing them again, recently in these past, the games, the past few seasons. Anyway, moving on. So 2 divisional games also took place on Christmas Eve on 1967. One of them was Dallas Cowboys. They put a hurting on the Cleveland Browns. That's right, the Cleveland Browns went to a lot of division rivalry games. They went to a lot of championships before the Super Bowl era. They were actually known to be, one of the teams to beat, before the Super Bowl era. So, but the Dallas Cowboys actually beat the Browns at this time 52-14 to advance. Dandy Don Meredith tossed 2 touchdown passes with 212 yards, but the Cowboys' ground game of Don Perkins and Craig Bainham with 2 touchdowns each powered the scoring for Dallas. And so the Dallas Cowboys actually won that divisional game, Christmas Eve, 1967. They beat the Browns 52-14. The second one was the Green Bay Packers, who won their division playoff game against the LA Rams 28-7. So there were 2 divisional games, Christmas Eve 1967. And then we'll move on to Christmas Day. To throw that out to you college folks, I think it's kind of cool. So on Christmas Day, 1894, the first intersectional college football game was played as the University of Chicago played Stanford University. The game was most likely established between the 2 coaches who were together at Yale University over a decade earlier. Stanford's coach was the father of football Walter Camp, who used to coach at the University of Chicago's head coach, Amos Alonzo Stagg. And so, anyways, so there you go. The first intersectional college football game happened Christmas Day, 1894. Cool beans. So now we'll go to the Christmas Day games. All right. So on Saturday in 1971, the NFL decided to play its first Christmas games of that season, almost 4 decades after the NFL played its first Thanksgiving game. Those games were the Dallas Cowboys. The teams actually played on the first Christmas Day game in 1971 were the Cowboys, the Vikings, Kansas City Chiefs, and the Miami Dolphins. So those are 4 first teams and the 2 games that played on Christmas Day. And these, again, were divisional round playoff games. Again, same reason, shorter football season. So 1971, the Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs played in a very memorable game on Christmas Day in the AFC divisional contest. According to Pro Football Hall of Fame, it ended up being the longest NFL game ever, as it went to 2 overtime sessions. Remember, this before all these different rules. Okay, that's why it's still considered the longest NFL game ever. It went into 2 overtime sessions before Miami kicker Garo, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say this wrong, Yepremian booted a 37-yard field goal to advance the Dolphins in a 27-24 thriller. So again, that is the exciting game. Although the first game, officially, the first Christmas game went to the Cowboys and Miami, but that one kind of people don't really look at as memorably, even though they're technically the first game, because of how great the Miami and Kansas City was. So they were overshadowed by the second game, of the day. But the noon game was the Cowboys and the Vikings. And, Cowboys did win that game. Cowboys 20, Minnesota 12. And so those were the 2 Christmas Day games. And the NFL waited another 18 years before playing on Christmas again. And it's not because Christmas didn't fall on a Saturday or Sunday during that gap. The league actively avoided Christmas when scheduling its games. And so that's kind of why Christmas games actually fell on a Sunday in 1977, 83, and 1988. But the NFL they don't want to deal with that. And so they decided to do their divisional playoff games on the Saturdays before Christmas. And they wanted to avoid Mondays conflicting with people's holiday plans, right? They thought people were traveling, no one's going to watch it. And so they didn't put any Christmas Day games on Mondays either. And because, I don't know if you know this, if you watch other sports, the NBA is one that's owned most of the, Christmas Day viewership for a long time. But the NFL, which is considered the great white shark of content, in recent days has, swallowed up viewership. And the reason there are so many Christmas games is because Roger Goodell. He became commissioner in 2006, and the NFL has played 15 of its 27 Christmas games between 2006 and 2022. The reason we have so many Christmas games now is because Roger Goodell likes them. And that's why now we have Christmas Day games. Yeah. So doesn't belong to the NBA anymore, although there's, but that's why. There you go. Those are your Christmas Eve Day games and your Christmas Day facts.
All right. Well, thank you, Delilah. Yeah, money is the big reason Christmas games are on. You know that money. You don't want that money.
But all these other people didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do it. Let's do
it. Make that money. Make that cheddar. All right. Well, listen, we do thank you for that, Delilah.